draft?
3 days into our third day upstairs. It's good. It's been great, and getting deeper into it, and there's a bunch of good players at the top of the board. So it's an exciting time, and we're going to get a chance to add a good player, and it's one player at the top, and we have to choose one. It can't be more than one. So we'll take all the time we have up between now and next Sunday to figure that out.
Have you narrowed it down at all, or are you just keeping your options?
I think it gets narrower all the time. We'd rather not define exactly how narrow it is right now, but it gets narrow. Every hour you spend on it, it gets a little bit narrower. But I don't think I fully expect that we go into Sunday, a week from tomorrow, still with multiple considerations at the top. So we'll dig into it, and of course the rest of the board is really important too. So we're spending time on the whole draft and not just one.
Ben, it seems like a thought that people have is if you draft Skeens, if you draft Cruz, that they could be up here and help the Pirates this season. How realistic would that be? I'm not saying like any player individually. Like, how realistic is it to think that a player that you take next week could be up here this season and help this team?
Well, first of all, I just want to be clear. I wouldn't stop at 2 players. We have more than that under consideration, but that would be pretty aggressive even for a advanced college player to consider. I guess it has happened, but pretty aggressive. I think whoever we take, obviously we'll believe is going to be a really good player and have a chance to help us, and hopefully have a chance to help us in the relatively near future. But we still need to keep in mind that future and making sure that we're not putting a player in a compromised position. I mean, all these guys, whether it's a high school or a college player, they've already had a full season. They've been playing a lot of baseball already, and then you have this gap, a little bit of a gap in time between end of the season, draft, whatever time it takes to get guys in and signed. So usually that time means you got to account for that time once they're signed and on the field and ramp back up. So it's just, we need to be careful about that. You don't rule anything out, but it's important. It's a really important decision, and we don't want to compromise that by kind of manufacturing a path that might not be, that might just be too risky. So we'll see. I think we just have to see how it goes and see who it is.
Ben, to kind of piggyback off that, the franchise is in a different place than it was 2 years ago when you were in this position. I mean, you're closer to where you think you want to be ultimately as a contender. Does that make you more inclined to go somebody that might be a little closer to being major league ready as opposed to if you were, earlier in this process?
No, I think the players at the top of the board are going to tell us which direction to go, more than kind of where we are as a team. We still have to think about best player. I believe that. I believe that's just always the case for every baseball team. It's just too hard to, even if you're talking about a college player who might be a little bit closer than a high school player, it's still, lots can happen in this game. Even between this year and 12 months from now, a lot can happen to our team, and what the needs might be or what the fit might be. So I think we want to still go back to best player available.
On that note, how much does it bother you that some people have just basically pronounced that Cruz is the number 1 guy and that anybody else would be a concession?
I don't think anything. I mean, all the mocks have none of it bothers me. I mean, it's a fun part of the game, right? Like we've talked about. I remember as a kid, waiting for Baseball America to show up on the newsstand and picking it up, the draft preview issue, because it's an exciting time, and we all love to follow it. So if people are interested in that, that's probably good for baseball, and none of it bothers me. I think that, but the truth is, we don't know.
I'm saying the suggestion that if you don't take the guy that everybody's saying is number 1 guy, then you've made some type of concession, whether it's for slot going under slot,
oh, I see.
Or whether it's that you've drafted the guy that's not the best player in the draft.
Well, on the first part of that question, no, I'm not worried about that because we're going to spend our pool, and I'm confident of that, and people will see that. I fully expect to do that, and people will see that by the end of the process. On on the second part of the question, yeah, I guess that's the beauty of it, right? Like, you know, it's totally reasonable for people to have different opinions on these things, and you know, we have to make choices, and not everyone is going to agree with those choices all the time. But that's sort of part of the nature of the business, and really part of I think the fun of the business is that you can have different opinions on players.
You said it's more than just Cruz and Skeens at the top of your draft board, but those are the two guys that a lot of people kind of penciled in 1-2 in some way, shape, or form. Just what have you heard about those two guys in particular?
Heard a lot about those and a lot of other players too. I mean, we've been following this whole class, you know, closely now for a while. I mean, even before we got the first pick, we knew we were going to be picking high. So, you know, go back to last summer, we were looking at who might be in the class and who might gravitate towards the top. So we're still doing that. We're still learning about all the guys, and we think it's a strong group at the top of it. And by group, I really do mean that goes much deeper than two players. So we think it's a strong group at the top of the board.
Sorry. Going back to the draft pool, there are a couple reports, you know, that a couple of these guys would want, you know, the full slaughter, maybe even over. Is that something that, you know, is considered, you know, whenever you're weighing 1-1 here, of maybe we could go over slot for this guy, or because you got a whole draft, you know, to look forward to here?
We haven't gotten to that point in the process yet where we're kind of layering that in. Right now, we're just focused on getting the board set up and getting the order right, at least in our opinion, right, and that I believe that needs to come first, and you know, honor the board and honor the sort of the order, and then that information, you know, gets layered on, you know, as we get closer to a week from tomorrow. And the first choice is really important, to state the obvious. Every team's job is to get as much total talent out of every draft as they can, and historically, when you have the first pick, the biggest portion of that is going to be from the first pick. So you do that. We have to consider that. You know, that the history says that's where the best player is going to come from. But the whole draft is important, and our job is to get as much as we can out of the whole draft. So we'll get to that later. We're right now just focused on the board itself and understanding the players and trying to get them in the right order.